Hello everyone, my name is Joshua. This is the 148th video on my video journal series. Today's date is Monday, the 6th of July, 2026. How's everyone been? I've been pretty good, thank you. And as you may have noticed, I'm not in my usual space today. That's because my usual space is currently occupied by my brother for tonight. So I'm back in the shack. Last time I was in here was for my 100th video celebration. And fun fact, this is the first video where I'm recording with my new tripod, which I just got in the mail today. I threw out my old one, and this one seems a lot more sturdier, and it holds the camera up very well, so no complaints. But today I wanted to talk about my life as an introvert. Now, obviously, I'm not much of an introvert nowadays. In fact, I consider myself to be a little bit more extroverted. But when I was growing up, as a youngin', I found myself to be incredibly introverted, and part of that was due to my lacking social communication skills. In fact, it wasn't until I got my first part-time job in the fast food sector when I was 15 years old did I really start to develop my social communication skills. And, obviously, people watching this video who were introverted or who are introverted right now, or who identify themselves as, I guess, introverted, will be able to, resonate with this. Yet again, this is all my own opinion, but I felt like the reason why I was introverted as a child, and I guess why most people are introverted, is because they're afraid to speak up, because people won't take them seriously, or they don't know how to communicate certain ideas or concepts because they got like a limited vocabulary, or they just stumble up their words. They don't have confidence. And I certainly felt that as well, because growing up, obviously as a kid, people I guess take you a little bit more what's the word, they take you more light-heartedly. They don't really take you as serious as an adult, which can go both ways. People find you funnier when you're like a child, but children also have problems. Children need to explain to their parents about certain things, but how can you do that when you want to act more serious, but society perceives you to be just, I guess, young and free with no problems, or just more or less serious than an adult. There's some serious hurdles that I guess come with this dilemma, but I always found, just setting the tone of a conversation clearly, when I was young, I felt like, whenever I try to have a serious conversation with somebody, they just like perceive to what I was saying as more or less, humorous, or, like not very serious. And, if all you just say provokes, I guess, a humorous response from the audience when you're trying to be serious, that does really, I guess, let you down a bit. And I don't want to make this video like bleak or anything, but that is a serious hurdle, right? And if you got that perception in your mind, everything I'll say will just be regarded as a joke when really I'm serious. It does inhibit your social skills. And obviously, this just comes with age. Obviously you develop your social skills, you develop maturity, wisdom, and I guess when you're a lot older, you are, more serious, or you're taken more seriously. But it's just overcoming that obstacle in your head, like that perception, of preconceived failure. Like, I can already anticipate what I'm going to express is going to be, disastrous. It's not going to result well. It won't have the effect that I wanted it to have. And that's certainly what I felt when I was younger, and that's why I was, introverted. But it was when I entered the workforce, did I realize that, hey, I have to speak to people. Even if you don't work in customer service, you still have to communicate well with your managers and other co-workers. And obviously, when you're in a working environment, things are much more serious because people actually listen to what you say, and then people have to do um, things, and people have to act upon your words, and if you're like obviously serving customers or whatever, when you say something to the customer, they're going to take you seriously because their money is on the line. They want a service, they want a product. They're looking towards you for the answer. So they're going to take you seriously. They're going to take you as an adult. That can go both ways, obviously. You have to go deal with the Karens and Kyles. And I'm sorry if your name is Karen or Kyle, but those are the stereotypes of people who like to complain the most in customer service. But, it's just, you know, you have to be able to communicate well within a team. And certainly that's one thing I'm grateful for within my time in fast food and retail. It's basically building up the courage to speak to people and to, you know, communicate to other people, even older people who are older than you, who like listen to what you're saying, and then they like follow orders from you or they understand you. Um, and yeah, like obviously, it's just that experience. But entering in, the service industry for the first time, it is challenging. You do feel nervous. Even after years and years, you still get dealt with new problems and new customers to deal with, new attitude, new behaviors. And yeah, like you know, I know plenty of people who are like me, I guess. Um, who often, I guess, work more behind the scenes rather than dealing with customers. I wish I was one of those people, because some days I just, went into work. I'm like, I don't want to speak to everyone because I just had like a very bad day. But then you get like a Karen, as your first customer, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm just calling down the manager. I'm serving the next person. Even some of the most outgoing people, they're, I guess, the most extroverted people out there in the world, some days just want to be left alone and, just do work in a, tiny corner and not be able to just talk to anyone. But yeah, my role was just basically talking to people, that was me every single day. So you'll know how I feel when, some days you don't want to talk or you've just been let down. You have to go to work and you got to deal with people who you don't want to deal with, honestly. And I don't mean that in a mean way, I just mean that in a very tired way. Um, but, one way to sort of overcome that, even as an introverted person, is just to, obviously um, think to yourself, all right, this person doesn't know who I am, all right? I am just going to do, quote unquote, the bare minimum and just say, hi, what would you like? Just give them a smile if you can. And, you know, if you're unsure of anything, just call down the manager, obviously. But, you know, like, it's really hard for me to put this into words, but you essentially be robotic, all right? You just give like simple responses, simple but effective responses, and as long as you serve that customer, get through all their needs, like who cares, right? You don't need to like strike a conversation on what you did, last weekend or anything. Um, you just like sort of act in a serious deadpan tone, like, hi, what would you like? That's just if you're really feeling down. Um, that was my strategy, because like sometimes when you're like really happy, I felt like customers would also be very happy, which is a good thing, but then they expect me to be happy throughout the rest of the conversation. If I switch tone, they think that something's wrong. you know um and like, being happy in, like, I guess those industries, right, quickly wears you down. Especially after like a long shift, you just want to go home. Now I'm just ranting about work, but I feel like people can resonate with what I'm saying here. It's just like, some days, even as like an extroverted person, you just want to feel like, hey, I just want to rest my voice, I want to rest my face, I just want to, just do silent work, but you can't because you're rostered in the exact same position. So yeah, sometimes you sort of have to be a little bit robotic, just like you say, yes, I'll do this. Hi, what would you like? Yep. Would you like onions with that? Yep. All right, head through next window. I know that sounds a little bit, I guess, robotic. We certainly don't need more, I guess, AI intervention within today's world, but that's just my tip for going through a very, I guess, gruesome day at work. Let's call it that. Gruesome in the fact that you're very tired and you just, maybe need a break. And certainly, like, there's been days, right? Even, recently where, I just feel like I just want to stay in my room, just like rest, take a rest. And people think I'm weird for wanting to like solo travel by myself. Like, why don't you invite any friends? But I'm like, all right, I love my friends and all that, but like, I want some downtime to myself, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But sometimes, yeah, you just want to like travel by yourself. You don't really want to travel with a friend or anything. You just want that sense of freedom. Um, and certainly, like, I guess towards the end of it, you do feel a bit isolated. But that's the reason why I like solo traveling, because it really allows me to, you know, just think for myself, and give myself some serious like downtime. Um, like, if I were to travel with my parents, it must likely be a nightmare. I'm really saying that, but like, sometimes things are a little bit too stressful because it feels more like you're on a school excursion rather than, really relaxing with your parents. But yeah, like that's why I just like traveling by myself, and sometimes I like to travel with a friend for a day. But other than that, I just want to go at my own pace and just stay in my own cocoon for a few weeks, and then when I'm ready to come out of that cocoon, I'm ready to come out. And then I'm like, hi everyone, my holiday was great. Nice um, meeting all you guys again. But yeah, even nowadays, right? I do feel just a little bit like a tad bit, little bit, I guess, introverted, but certainly not for like an extended period of time, just maybe for like 1 or 2 weeks. But yes, so obviously that's just, I guess, my life. Being a little bit on the introverted side, and certainly, like I said, there's no, definitive proof that being introverted is better than being extroverted, or being extroverted is better than being introverted. It's just a characteristic, right? Certainly being introverted means you don't really, I guess, communicate a lot, but you can't really change that sort of thing. Like, don't push yourself to be someone who you're not. If you're just not a very talkative person, then that's fine. You can find success in many different fields. If you're a very talkative person, then go into public speaking. Go into a role that suits talkative people. If you're, I guess, more of an ideas person, you just like to write things down and not really talk, then find a career that suits that characteristic. That's why we have difference in the world. That's why I'm different to my mother, to my father, to my brother, to my friend, to my cousin. We share things in common, but we're different. And like, certainly, I do kind of wish to have a job where some days I'm just like at myself in the office, just typing away or not speaking to many people. But then there's some days where I'm like, you know what, I want to talk to people. I want to get to know people's problems and listen to others. But yeah, like, we all need some downtime to ourselves. And I wouldn't call that inherently introverted, but it's just, I guess, human nature. um, Eventually we're all gonna like run out of steam, and we're like, all right, I'm ready to crash a bed. That's certainly me. Sometimes when I'm recording these videos, I'm like, all right, I'm just so tired. I just want to hit the bed. I don't want to speak in front of the camera today, but I do so anyway because I got to keep up with the challenge. My project. But anyway, So yeah, that's enough of my life. But if I had to give like, I guess tips, right? If I had to give more tips on, trying to communicate more effectively, um, obviously, yet again, the first thing I mentioned was setting the tone of a conversation, making it clear at the start of the conversation you're being serious. Calming things down a bit, just saying, hey, I know we've all had a good laugh, but I'm trying to be serious here. Another thing can also just be, simple things like eye contact, hand movements like what I'm doing right now, and just like pacing your voice, just to be a lot more slower. Because when you're a lot more faster paced, that means, um, it indicates excitement, it indicates happiness. I wouldn't be speaking in this tone if I was conveying very sad news, but if I want to convey something that is very serious, I talk more like this. And I talk more like this because, yet again, I'm trying to be serious. So yeah, that's just an example. And obviously, right now I'm standing, and I notice when I stand, I'm a lot more active. I like to do more standing videos because when I sit down on the red couch, I feel more relaxed, and I feel like things are just a little bit more informal. But when I'm standing, I feel like a little bit more, I guess, active, engaged. I'm feeling a bit more serious when I'm standing. All right. When you're sitting down, you connotate basically you being in a relaxed mood, a relaxed atmosphere. When you're standing up, I guess that just indicates things to be a bit more serious and a bit more engaging. I don't know if you think that way, but I certainly do. At least within my opinion. All this is just my opinion. Um, just those simple techniques. And, like obviously you can't control what I guess people are going to react with, but you can certainly influence it, you know, um, like I said, you could just be, cracking jokes and then you're just trying to switch to a more serious tone. That's going to be a sudden switch. Just let things calm down a bit. And when you're ready to express that serious concern or idea, you do so. You just start it off by like at least getting everyone's attention. Just saying, hey, I know we've all had a good laugh. We need good laughs. But, we need this project done by tomorrow. um, you know, and yeah, like, just those simple techniques, and I guess, you know, really, I guess getting everyone's attention is another thing, and this can sort of, I guess, you know, make yourself more serious to others, but also that thing I said about earlier, when your brain just perceives something as impossible, it's like, well, I can actually get everyone's attention and make people view me as a more, I guess, serious person. Maybe this isn't impossible. Maybe I can actually be a very serious and mature person. So it gets rid of that barrier in your brain where you're like, all right, well, no one's going to take me seriously. It might as well be the class clown. No, people can take you seriously. And that is something that, everyone should, sort of respect. And everyone should be able to treat, people with respect and hear them out in a respectful and serious manner. Um, you know, just make it clear, hey, this isn't a joke. I'm just trying to be serious because I have this issue or I want to express this idea or concern. It could be in a group project. It could be explaining something to an adult or to another person or to a teacher. Um, you know, this is a serious thing that I have, to just be anything, but, this is a serious proposition, a serious concern. Um, just make that clear from the get go. And yeah, just, you know, in life, right, being silent doesn't really resolve um, things, So you got to communicate effectively to other people within life, because if you can't communicate to another person that, you're struggling with a certain thing, or you don't understand a certain concept, or if you need clarification on something, then obviously, that will create confusion within your brain, and you're like, all right, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just, wandering around aimlessly, And that certainly was me growing up, I was just confused because I didn't know how to, like, propose serious questions or questions that, were serious in nature or would be taken seriously. Um, but there's no such thing as a dumb question. Just say to yourself, all right, well, if it's a dumb question, then you should be able to respond to it very, you know, um, very quickly. If someone says that's a dumb question, but they can't, answer that dumb question, then who's the dumb one? I think it's the other person because they can't explain it. They assumed what you said was dumb, but you know, they said to themselves, all right, well, I can't actually figure this out. So maybe I'm just going to disguise this whole thing. All right, that's just stupid. Everyone knows that except me, obviously. um, yeah, so like I said, I believe there's no such thing as a dumb question. If something seems so dumb, then you should be, well, that person who said it was dumb should be able to explain it perfectly to someone like a fifth grader. Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? They seem very simple in nature, but if you had to explain it to a fifth grader, it's a lot more complex. So yeah, there's no such thing as a dumb question. All questions are serious in nature. So that can come, I guess that can come in handy if you got that hurdle within your brain. You're like, all right, I can't do this. People are not going to take me seriously if I ask this question. No, get rid of that in your brain because um, all questions are serious in nature, and like yet again, though, if it's so simple, then why can't the other person just explain it to you in a very simple manner? Um, and if I had to give a maybe like one more tip, right? If you just want to be able to improve upon your communication skills, one thing I found to be effective is, obviously to talk to people, obviously, but it's like talk to people who you don't know, right? Friends of friends. Start with you know, your mom's friends or your dad's friends or your friends of friends. Start, striking up conversation. Obviously they wouldn't know you all too well. You don't know them all too well. Start with just the simple questions and small conversation. Really build that up. Because obviously, when you're speaking to these people, like it's much more, I guess, for informal environment. You're not speaking to like a head of like a CEO of a company or a celebrity or whatever. It's just literally a friend of a friend. So even if like you're very nervous or whatever, there's gonna be like no repercussions or anything. It's just life experience. But just start talking to people who I guess are a little bit outside your circle, and just started off basic. Hi, my name is Joshua. I am 20 years old. I am interested in this, and this. What are you interested in? What do you do for work? Um, just build that up over time. It takes a long time, and that's why I recommend to get it started now. But that will help build your social communication skills. Um, even just speaking in a slower pace, because sometimes, right, in society, we assume people talking in a slower pace to be boring. You know, they could have like some really good ideas, but if I'm just talking like this, everyone wants to go to sleep. Um, you know, and certainly when I speak fast, sometimes I stumble with my words. You've most probably noticed that within this video alone. But, um, you know, if I'm stumbling, whatever, I just like to switch back to a more neutral tone. Again, use the words that speak at the pace which you're comfortable with. Just speak in like a, I guess, informal tone if you have to. If you stumble up a word or anything, just like continue, right? Or just say sorry. If you can't think of another word, just like move on because leaving long gaps is worse than stumbling up your words or just getting like the pronunciation of a word slightly wrong because, you know, it will create a serious disconnect within your conversation, you know. Um, but obviously, you know, everyone has their own way, their own method of overcoming their, I guess, um, social communication deficit. Let's call it that. And certainly, this is not a one size fits all approach. Yet again, this is just my own opinion based on my own personal experience. But I want to hear your perspective. You know, like what would you do if you had to like start things over again? If your social communication skills, or you know, as an introvert, if you're an introvert watching this, or if you're someone who identifies themselves to be more introverted rather than extroverted, what are like the, I guess, the most common reasons why you don't really strike up conversation, or why you're not really compelled to? Yet again, though, you know, it's not like a one size fits all approach. Certainly, a lot of things I said in this video might just apply to like, you know, some people, but not others, and that's fine, you know. But you know, if one thing's for certain in life, you got to speak to other people whenever you like it or not. But especially when you're in the workforce, communication is a very, very important thing, and it will make your life a lot easier if you can just put things even to very simple terms, and being clear. You know, being clear is, you know, more important than using fancy words, in my opinion. You know, as long as you can, you know, just do the basics. You know, it's like even some days just being like a robot, like, hi, how can I help you? You know, that sort of thing. That's still effective, and you know, it's more effective than just simply standing there and, excuse me, not really doing anything. And I just felt a burp coming up my throat. But yeah, so yeah, obviously communication is important, and yet again, though, there's no inherent wrong with being an introvert or being an extrovert. It's just yet again a characteristic. At least within my eyes, it is. You know, there's nothing ashamed of just not wanting to, I guess, speak to people. Sorry. You know, certainly some days, right? There's just some days where I just want to be by myself. We all go through those, I guess, mood swings, or I guess fluctuations. But yet again, that's human nature, right? It's the reason why we like to go on vacation by ourselves, you know, not with our bosses. Yeah, so if I had to conclude this video, yeah, within my view, within my opinion, which is not always, you know, I guess, accurate, but who cares, it's just my opinion. You know, just, you know, do what you're comfortable with, but having said that, you know, try and occasionally step outside the box, you know. You know, we all have to, yeah, again, talk to other people in life. And, you know, one way we can do that is just to be, well, you know, respectful, serious, mature, you know, to be, I guess, you know, truthful, and to really, you know, be able to speak clearly, right? If you can do those things, then people will obviously, you know, be able to, I guess, take what you're saying to be a lot more serious, to be a lot more respectful, and you know, yeah, like, you know, you'll find it easier to, you know, get the things that you want done or need to do, you know, uh, a lot more, what's the word, a lot more effectively, a lot more efficiently. You know, it's like, hey, sorry, can you just like do this quick thing for me? And people are like, all right, yeah. You know, it depends what the task is, but yeah, if you need an issue resolved, or if you just need to say something to someone, you can do so because you possess those qualities. And yet again, though, it's like, even someone who's worked in customer service, sometimes I've met, you know, introverted, I I presume they're introverted, like customers, like, hey, what would you like? And it's just like silent. I'm like, you came up to me, I'm trying to serve you, and they're like, like, oh, well, I think I'll get I'll get this, I just want this thing or whatever. And I don't speak to you throughout the entire conversation. Like, you can't even call it conversation, throughout the entire encounter. I'm like, you come up to me, you have an issue obviously, or you want something from me. What is it? Just say it. And they don't like say anything. I'm like, all right, well, what am I supposed to do? There's a line. But yet again, just be who you are. Don't try and, I guess, push yourself to be um, like really, really outgoing if you're not really comfortable with that sort of thing. Just communicate to the people that you feel comfortable with. Yet again, in life, one thing I hate is just pushing people to do things that they don't want to. Obviously, no one likes doing that. I don't like, to enforce my opinion onto others. That's an example. And that's why I just clearly state this is my opinion. It's not always the correct, I guess. Like, well, what is correct actually when it comes to opinion? I can't really think of a clear sort of definition, but it's just my perspective, my lens, which I see things through. Hopefully, this video will inspire a few people, or at least get people to really think about this sort of thing. But it's just through my lens, all right? Just be who you are. There's only one of you in the entire universe, and live up to your potential. This sounds like like a PSA at the end of a Saturday morning kids cartoon, but I really do mean it. Just be able to talk to people, but just be yourself, and just do what you're, I guess, comfortable with, in terms of your social communication skills. Use the words that use the ideas that use the techniques that because if you do those things without actually knowing them, the increased likelihood is that you're gonna stumble, and you'll be even more scared. But some days, right, we have to, I guess, adopt those techniques, or to sometimes use stuff that we're unfamiliar with, to simply climb, or I guess jump that hurdle, if you know what I mean. It's just all part of life. But yet again, though, just just do what you're comfortable with. And yet again, there's nothing wrong with not wanting to speak to people for days or weeks on end. Just human nature. But I think if it's a lifelong thing, then you could be, I guess, you could identify yourself as being a little bit more introverted. But yet again, I don't really view that as a inherent negative or whatever. It's just more of a characteristic. And we certainly need a lot more brains in the world, I'll tell you that. A lot more deep thinkers, people who spend time thinking, and thinking a lot. But anyway, that's enough of me rambling. And yet again, this video is just all my opinion. And I guess that's why I'm making this video journal series, because I know my opinion will change over time, and my stance on certain things, and it's going to make me look a little bit dumb in retrospect, but that's just how life rock and rolls. I'm still young, I'm still learning things, and I'm always talking to people to, I guess, gather more information about things and what they think and all that. But anyway, I've done enough speaking. Hopefully tomorrow I'm back in my usual space, but apart from that, have a great rest of your day, and this has been Joshua. Catch you all tomorrow.